Now moving on to payroll. Now we can see that she's done payroll manually, and she's giving us the PDOC, that's what I call it, Payroll Deductions Online Calculator printout. And she's told us what the pay period is, what the regular hours are, and that they were paid, that Kamal was paid 2 hours of overtime. And the reason I'm giving this as an example in the case study is I want to point out, as of the time of this recording, and has been an issue with the QuickBooks payroll for many years now, is that the way that it accrues vacation pay is done both correctly and incorrectly. It's done correctly because it does accrue, the 4% of the earnings, but then it also quote unquote accrues 4% of the hours and only really displays that as an option sometimes on the check stub. And the hour, and it equates the two, and the two don't equate. And I was going to illustrate that using today's payroll. So when payroll is done manually, that is not using payroll software or a payroll service, but instead going onto CRA's Payroll Deductions Online Calculator and just sort of plugging in the information and the wages to see what the deductions are, we do need to keep track of that information in, say, a spreadsheet somewhere, because it's not being tracked by payroll software. So I did discuss this in previous weeks of the case study. I also provided a payroll tracker in which we can plug in those hours. So you can see how the hours are 62 regular and 2 overtime. Well, that's 64, and then we'll plug in the wages, and then you can put in the tax that was deducted, the CPP and the EI, and this way it sort of tracks the totals for T4s and also tracks what your monthly source deductions should be. So that's for manual payroll. I don't suggest doing payroll manually. There's so many chances to make a typo. And when you have payroll software or payroll service, they're also going to help you with the things such as the T4s and the ROEs. So I feel like there's actually a lot of benefit to using payroll software or payroll service, even if you only have one employee. That's just my professional take on the situation. And I also want to illustrate in this case study how to use the payroll tax module of QBO. I personally prefer using WagePoint. That's not the only pony in town. You've got Payworks, there's so many options out there. I don't actually suggest using QuickBooks Payroll. Yes, it does integrate nicely into your QuickBooks file, but it has a few drawbacks that they haven't worked out the kinks yet, that I've seen some issues with. And I wanted to illustrate one of those today, as I mentioned. So let's go ahead, let's put in this paycheck through the QBO payroll software and see what I mean about that accrual of the vacation hours discrepancy. So we're back in QuickBooks. Let's go to payroll employees. And first, I just want to show that he's at $19.50 an hour, and it says he's got 4.81 hours available, which is $93.76 in accrued earnings. So let me just bring up a spreadsheet here, and we're going to put that in our spreadsheet. We're going to say right now he's got 4.81 hours at $19.50 an hour, and if we say 4.81 multiplied by his hourly rate equals $93.79. So $93.76. There's a little bit of rounding going on there, but within a few pennies, that's pretty close. Okay, right? Let's put some labels in there. That's what we're noting now before we're running this current payroll. Okay, so let's bring that back in a moment. Let's go ahead and run the payroll. We can see right now it has up, make sure it's got the right pay period up. So that's 25th to June 7th. And we can see that the pay date is the 13th. So that's all correct. And now let's go ahead and put in the regular pay, just how she has it here. So that was 62 hours regular and 2 hours overtime, which comes to $1,267.50, which is what she has put in as the earnings. Perfect. Preview payroll. Now it's not showing us the deductions here. We can click in and take a closer look if we want. Let's do that. And we can see how the math is all working. We can change the rate of overtime if we want to. We can add stat pay if we want to. But you can see it's calculated. Let's make sure 23950, 23950, 6741, 6741, and 2079. So it's calculated the deductions the same. And we can see that the net pay then, that's the year to date, but the net pay of this check is $93980, $93980. Now here's the interesting part. If we scroll down to the bottom, we can see that from this paycheck, 2.56 hours have been accrued, increasing the hours available, and that $50 has been accrued, increasing amount available. Let's go ahead and just double check that in our spreadsheet. So how many hours do we have here in total? 64 hours. So if we were to say that there was 64, there it is. There we go. So if we were to say just a new section over here, if he worked 64 hours, and we basically say this multiplied by 0.04, you can see why it thinks 2.56 hours have been accrued. But we're not accruing vacation time. You don't. Vacation time is not the same as vacation pay. Vacation time is the amount of time an employee is entitled to take off. It doesn't accrue by 0.04 or 4%. That's not how vacation time works. The way vacation time works is that if an employee works for 52 weeks, they're entitled to take 2 weeks off. How much vacation pay are they entitled to when they take that time off? 4% of their earnings. So this is not a truth. This doesn't make sense. Like, you don't accrue vacation hours. I mean, maybe you do if you have like a special vacation policy. I don't want to say that that's not allowed, but what I am saying that in Ontario, your vacation time entitlement is based on length of the amount, the period of time that you worked, not the amount of hours that you worked. So this hours accrued shouldn't be showing if I was able to set up the vacation policy the way that the standards are in Ontario. So that's the first problem, and we'll talk about why that's a problem. Now, the amount accrued, let's take a look to see what the earnings are for this period. And the earnings for this period are, the total is 1,267.50. So that's these two amounts right here. So I'm going to just pop that in. 1,267.50. Pull that over for you to see. So I put in that 1,267.50, and we'll scroll down to see the amount accrued. And if we multiply this by 0.04, 50 and 70 cents is 4% of the earnings. So this amount accrued is correct. So the hours accrued is nonsensical. The amount accrued is correct, right? So we'll refer back to that in just a second. So we're going to go ahead and hit save. And we're happy with this. So let's go ahead and submit payroll. Now, I did say that this is a manual check, so that's not sending direct deposit, and that is because this is a fake case study, which is why it wants me to put up the check number. And if we go ahead and print the pay stub, we take a look, what we can see is that the vacation amount only is showing and not the vacation hours. And this is because I went into settings and turned that off. We turned off showing the vacation hours because it's incorrect the way that QuickBooks has the hours showing. So let me show you what I mean. We're going to close this and let's go back to employees. And now you can see it thinks that Kamal has 7.37 hours available. It correctly knows that he has $144 available, but this hours doesn't make any sense. Let me show you what I mean here. So if it's saying that his vacation hours available are 7.37, and if those vacation hours were available at $19.50 an hour, how much percent, like amount, would that be? The hours times the rate, 143.71, and you can see it's actually 144.46. Because he worked overtime. He earned 4% on wages that were higher than 19.5. And you can see how, yes, this is just a teeny bit right now, but what happens is the more overtime the employee works and the longer this accrues and moves forward for, the more and the more out of whack it gets. And so this is why I have been sort of saying to QuickBooks, vacation hours is not the same as vacation pay, right? You can't equate them because now the math doesn't work. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. In fact, when we go to pay out the vacation pay under Run Payroll, you can see it forces us to say what it is in hours. In fact, see how it almost like holds our hand and leads us to pay out 7.4 hours. There is a workaround though. The first workaround is don't show the balance of hours on the employee's paycheck because that's wrong. And that's in settings, and I showed that previously. The other now workaround is how to change that balance there so it's not out of whack on our QuickBooks. So I'm going to show you where to do that. You go to the employees file. We scroll down to the time off section and we click make adjustments, and there's that 737 that's incorrect. And we're going to adjust the vacation hours. The amount is right, but not the hours. And the way I figure that out is I say, all right, so if he's got 144 entitlement, and he right now is at 19.50. So we say this divided by 19.50 technically is 7.41 hours. Let's pull this over. We'll say equals 7.41 minus 7.37. The difference is 0.04. So let's put that in. So let's adjust by 0.04. And so you can see that we're increasing it. We would have underpaid the employee if we just went on the hours. That's why I say it's non-compliant. And the actual vacation hours has now been put up to the 7.41. This is not going to change the general ledger in any way because the vacation pay payable is still unchanged at 144.46. That is correct, and we're not going to change that. We're just changing the hours, and this is what you have to do every time somebody gets paid overtime. You're going to have to go in and fix these hours each time, or just ignore them and know that they're wrong and make sure that they don't show up on the paycheck. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now when we go back to the employee list, you can see that it is now showing the correct amount of hours. Now, I know it feels like 0.04 hours isn't a lot, but from my experience, I've seen a lot of people work a lot of overtime and a lot of missed vacation pay payable paid out to employees because of this issue that I see in QuickBooks that equates time off entitlement to be the same as earnings accrued. They're not the same. They're two different things. We will see this play out again in a couple of weeks because Kamal Ahmad is going to get a pay raise and it's going to cause the very same problem again. And we're going to go and see how that looks, and we're going to go and fix it again. And hopefully in the near future, this section of the case study will be obsolete because QuickBooks has corrected this misequation of time off entitlement with the vacation pay earned. So that is it for the payroll file for now. Let's go ahead, and statements is next, and it's empty. There are no statements in the second week of June. Before we got to the statements anyway, the next thing that we'd want to do is clear the bank feed. So that is the next thing that we're going to do in our June week 2 case study. I've mentioned this before. I like to start with the credit cards. This is because often there are many different credit cards and the business owner just tends to give 500, 500, 500, and it's just much easier to figure out if I see it from the credit card perspective first. That's just a Naomi method of doing it though. There's no rule. And then I like to follow up with the savings and then end with the main checking account. So let's start with the Triangle MasterCard. So this is going to be fun for me because this is like, again, the first time really, other than last week, that I'm using this new AI assisted bank feed. And let's see how it goes for us for this current week. So just a reminder, the date, bank description, spent and received, that is all from the bank, information from the bank. And then the tax to and match, that's all on the QuickBooks side. So you cannot trust what it says here. It's just sort of guessing. So right here, Fancy Planters, it actually has this little toggle onto match because it can actually see one to match to. So even though this doesn't have any tax here under select tax, it doesn't matter. It's not going to do anything in these two sections when you're set to match because you're just going to match to the existing QuickBooks transaction. So let's go ahead and match. That's marrying the bank feed info line to the existing QuickBooks transaction like this. So we can see the next two items also have a match. I like to look at the date, June 12th, June 12th, DHL, DHL, excellent. So I'm going to hit match. And the expense June 13th, June 13th, ready to match, match. So it's nice and easy. Credit cards are usually pretty easy. Then we're going to go over to the Canada Bank checking because the savings is all caught up. And the line of credit is all caught up. So that means all we have left now is the Canada Bank checking. So it says check 07, but it can't actually see who that check is for. It's just noticing that on June 5th, we wrote a check to GNOME Hardware for this amount. Even though this is clearing 2 days later, it's very likely that this is the GNOME Hardware because the amount is correct. We said it was bill payment 17 and it's check 17, right? So we're confident that's a match. We are marrying the bank feed info line to an existing QBO transaction. Here we've got an e-transfer auto deposit. It doesn't tell us who it's from. All it says is on June 9th, we got an e-transfer for $200. Because we entered a payment called e-trans, we know we're looking for an e-transfer, June 9th, 200. So even though this doesn't say that it's from War and Peace, we have a high degree of certainty because of all the crumbs that we left that this is going to match to the War and Peace payment. Next, we have sent an e-transfer. It doesn't say here who we sent the e-transfer to. Some bank feeds too. In fact, more and more bank feeds are saying where the e-transfer is being sent to, but not all the time. So that's why we're doing a case study with the bank feed not showing that information. And if we had just entered the bill for, 400 and whatever, like I think it was 440 something, we wouldn't be able to see the match because 450 does not match 447 or 446 or whatever the bill was. But because we put that bill payment in, see how quick this is? We just hit match and we're done. Now here's an e-transfer fee. And we can see that we've got a rule set, and the categorize means we're not just marrying a bank feed info line to an existing QBO transaction, we're actually adding a new QBO transaction the shortcut way from the bank feed. And because it's a rule, it's already lined it up for us as 0 rated from Canada Bank checking. Bank charges. So post, yes, go ahead and add this. And not only does it add it, then it also marries that bank feed info line and marries it. I keep mentioning that. I've mentioned it before. Here's the most recent transaction that's been added. We just did that. And I wanted to show you right here is what I mean by marrying the bank feed info line to the QuickBooks transaction. And this big screen expense entry screen, we entered this expense the shortcut way from the bank feed. So there's an explanation of some of these terms that I've been using throughout the case study. So next up is this branch deposit. If this is suddenly changed during this recording, it's because I had recorded that register recap last week twice and had accidentally put it in twice. So I went ahead and just fixed that right now. There was only the one. So what we did is from that register recap, it said $500 was deposited into the bank on June 9th. And here we can see that $500 going into the bank. All the bank feed tells us is there was a deposit at a branch for $500 on June 9th. But we've gone ahead and put in that register cash deposit last week during June week number one. So we're going to go ahead and just match that. Next, we have the Square. Square has given us some money, and last month I did show how if you only have one or two things paid by Square, how you can do it directly with the fees and each time. But once you start using Square a lot more, like manually figuring out what those fees are for each and like what combination and what the fees are for every single deposit is actually kind of more work than it's worth. It just depends on how many times you're using that Square payment method. Once or twice, 3 times, go ahead and do it the way that I showed last month. But this month we're going to use the Square clearing account because Sarah is using the Square payment card a lot more. And we can see we've already set up that rule to Square clearing saying to from Square to the Square clearing account at a scope for tax. It's all lined up for us. All we have to do is post. So just to remind you, we put in this deposit just now. See, this is what it looks like the big screen way. These are just sitting there ready to be used when we get the deposit slip. But this section right here, this is what we just put in from the bank feed. We put in the bank deposit. This is what it looks like the big screen way. And we just put it in what I call the shortcut way using the bank feed. Here we go. We've got an e-transfer sent for $939.80. It doesn't say who the e-transfer is sent to, but we just did that paycheck on June 13th for $939.80, so we have a high degree of certainty that this e-transfer was actually to Kamal. So let's go ahead and match it. And the very last thing for this week is that Interact e-transfer fee, and we've seen that already, the rule bank charges, so we can go ahead and post. So let me just go ahead behind the scenes, show you what's been posted from this bank feed. You can see all of these Moneris Visa, MasterCard, and debit deposits. They all went in automatically. You can see how many of them there have been already in June and how time consuming that would have been for us to click each time. So having these like I call them POS or point of sale device or credit card machine deposits going in automatically, that's the only automatic rule that I do. The rest of the rules I like to see. So now that we have the bank feed clear for the week and we have all of the source documents in for the week, now we are done with June week number 2 for the Grand Gate Gardens case study. I hope you found the information helpful in the building growth and success of the business you are working in and on. If you're interested in downloading the case study source documents or have any special requests for topics you'd like me to cover in upcoming weeks, you can find out more information in the link below. If you found this video useful, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Instagram at BeThatBusiness, and you can tweet at me or X at me. I'm at NiftyNomi, and I'm also at NiftyNomi on Twitch and TikTok. And you can find resources and courses about running a Canadian business on my website, naomiwilkins.ca. I love making business make sense. The video today was recorded in beautiful Oshawa, Ontario. Thanks so much for watching, and get out there and be that business that thrives.